Hi, I'm Topher McNeil. I'm a food scientist with a PhD in food science, and today I'm going to examine all 368 words on this loaf of store-bought bread. I'll tell you what you might be paying more for, if there's any red flags, and what's just marketing lingo to get you to choose this specific loaf of bread. No judgment here. I'm just helping you make the best decision for you. Let's look at this bread and read the fine print. This loaf has a front and back label with some pretty big marketing claims, so let's start there. This is Pepperidge Farm whole grain 15 grain bread, priced at $4.49. The two biggest words on the front of this package are whole grain. Grains themselves have generally a bran, endosperm, and germ. That's the actual seed of the plant. The FDA requires that if you are putting whole grain on a package, the flours used to make the bread are grains that are ground in their entirety to make flour. Breads like this Wonder Bread don't use whole grain flour. Wonder Bread is made using enriched white flour. White flour is produced with just the endosperm of the wheat. You can tell the whole grain flour is generally going to be much darker, richer in color, higher in fiber, has a lot of great health benefits. Wonder Bread, it's Wonder Bread. It's what you grew up with. So this is whole grain bread. That doesn't actually mean the same thing as whole wheat bread. This bread is labeled 100% whole wheat. The only grain in this bread is gonna be wheat. The 15 grains on this loaf of bread means that they've added other grains. That doesn't necessarily change how healthy it is, but it can be really appealing to consumers to see a number like 15 on the front of a package. A lot of this comes from the fact that they're high in fiber. And here on the front of the package, you can see it says good source of fiber. That is actually a term that's regulated by the FDA. In order to actually put that on a package, the single serving size, which is one slice of bread, needs to have at least 10% of your daily recommended amount of fiber. High fiber diets are associated with lower risk of cancer and also lower risk of heart disease. But also, dietary fiber will help move things along in your digestive tract. It is really good at feeding the microbes that live in your digestive tract. And those microbes, if they're healthy, actually provide a lot of health benefits, and they produce important metabolites and things that keep you healthy. Does having 15 different grains in this bread actually make it any healthier? Not necessarily. In this loaf of 100% whole wheat, you'll actually see on the front of the package, it's listed that per 2 slices of bread, it actually has 2 more grams of whole grain. They're not necessarily better or worse than each other. Really, you should just be trying to get more whole grains in your diet in any way, shape, or form. The fact that they prominently put 15 grains on the front of this package, there better be 15 actual grains in this bread, which if you look at the ingredients list, yes, there are 15. Most of it is whole wheat flour, but you'll also see wheat gluten as well as wheat berries. But then the other grains include flaxseed, oats, pearl barley, rye, triticale, corn, buckwheat, millet, amaranth, brown rice, whole quinoa, sorghum, and spelt. Yes, there are in fact 15 grains in this loaf, but many of them are listed after the statement contains 2% or less. Most of the grains are only present in this loaf in pretty small amounts. Some of the oats are on top as a topping, as opposed to actually really incorporated into the loaf of bread. One might argue that they set the number 15 as just a nice sounding number, which is neither a good or a bad thing. Some of the grains here in this loaf might be a little bit more obscure, like triticale, which is a hybrid of wheat and rye. The main reason why triticale is listed separately is it is in fact a separate plant. It was a crossbreed between wheat and rye that share some of the benefits of both. One of the stranger, in air quotes, stranger ingredients that you'll see here on this package is sugarcane fiber. It is the fiber that's left over after you press the sugar out of sugarcane. It can be used to make paper or compostable packaging. That is there because it's a great source of fiber. It's actually just a creative use of a wasted byproducts throughout the food production process and repurpose them so they're not actually going to waste. Other terms here on the front of this package that aren't regulated are things like delicious blend of grains and now better taste. There's a chance they did some consumer marketing like tests, but really it's just a way to draw you in. At the end of the day, it all comes down to personal preference. Here on the back of the package, it says, "We bake our bread with great taste and whole grain goodness." Whole grain goodness is not a scientific term, and it never will be. Getting down into some literal fine print on the front of the package, here at the bottom, you'll see no high fructose corn syrup listed. High fructose corn syrup really is no worse for you than other types of simple sugars. Our bodies have been breaking down fructose for millennia. I will say, sugar is the third ingredient on this package. Sugar is in bread because, number one, sugar tastes good. There's no denying that. But then also, some of those added sugars are added to feed the yeast that give bread its nice airy texture. Right next to that, no colors or flavors from artificial sources. It's typically not common to see artificial colors or flavors in bread. Once again, this is something that's appealing to consumers who are trying to eat mostly all natural foods. In all of this section of the loaf, you don't see the word bread listed anywhere. You see it down here in the bottom corner next to the weight. In order to be labeled as bread, the ingredients that are permitted are the things that you would expect. Flour, water, yeast, salt, sometimes dairy or eggs are added. There are limits on how much of certain things can be added, but those guidelines include pretty much everything that you would expect. Here on the back of the package is this heart healthy label. That is actually something that is federally regulated. The actual words heart healthy, those aren't really the terminology that the FDA would use. And that is why there's the little footnote stating exactly the language that the FDA permits about being good for your heart. Here on the back of this package, you'll see 10 grams of protein per 2 slices. Grains aren't a great source of protein, but for people who are vegetarian or vegan, grains and nut butters, like peanut butter, can be used complementary to each other in order to actually make a better source of protein than just bread on its own. So we've covered the front and the back of this package, but here on the side where the nutrition facts panel is, we're gonna find a lot of information. Nutrition facts panels are one of the most highly regulated parts of our food industry. Anyone could pick up any food package and understand what it means. Here at the top of the nutrition facts panel, it says that there are 16 servings per container and that each serving is a single slice of bread. A single slice of bread does have 120 calories. Calories are how we measure how much energy food provides us. Generally, grains are associated with being fairly high calorie for their weight because a lot of that is coming from the starches and the sugars that are in the bread. The very first thing listed is total fat. Generally, what you put on bread, like butter or peanut butter, is going to have much more fat than the bread itself. Going further down the nutrition facts panel is total carbohydrates. Really, carbs are not bad for you. It is just a way to get energy. But it's really easy to overdo it on carbohydrates. Generally, they're in things that are sweet. Just be aware that they're pretty easy to overeat. Here at the bottom section, this is where they list vitamins and minerals. These first 4 are actually legally required. But then these other 4, the thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, and folate, these are B vitamins that are necessary in your diet. They actually help regulate your metabolism. They make sure that you're digesting your food and you're getting energy from your food. Deficiencies in these vitamins can actually have really detrimental impacts on your health. Folate is particularly important for women who might become pregnant. Deficiencies of folate during pregnancy can lead to neural tube defects, which can make a child's life much harder. So folate is naturally occurring in the product, but other bread products are enriched to increase the amount of these B vitamins. Breads like this Farmhouse Hearty White, this was made with enriched flour and there's substantially more folate. And about 50 micrograms of that is coming from folic acid, which you often find in enriched grain products. As we keep moving down the label, we get down to the ingredients. Many of these additional ingredients are either emulsifiers or dough conditioners. Dough conditioners are really important when you're making manufactured bread like this because instead of being kneaded and rolled out by hand, these are being run through these heavy machines. So dough conditioners strengthen the dough, add a little bit of extra leavening, or serve as food for the yeast to produce a little bit more airiness. So here on this package, we'll see monoglycerides, datum, soy lecithin, and then whey. Datum stands for diacetyl tartaric acid ester of mono and diglycerides. Scary name, not as scary as it sounds. All it does is strengthen the gluten molecules, so they tighten the gluten structure. We owe all of the texture of bread to this really amazing tight gluten network. Also listed on this package, you'll see calcium propionate and sorbic acid to extend freshness. These preservatives make it hard for mold to start growing. This needs to stay fresh on a grocery store shelf for a couple of weeks. Another way that Pepperidge Farm is trying to ensure that this bread lasts as long as possible, it's double wrapped. They're extending the shelf life by just limiting as much transfer of air and moisture in and out of this packaging. So if you're a person who's trying to reduce single-use plastics, the inner bag is not recyclable. And the outer bag is recyclable, but it says specifically it's an in-store drop-off in order to recycle it. After the ingredients list, you do see the best if used by date is on the package. It's listed up here on the little twist tie at the top. There are a few things where expiration dates are actually legally required, but treat the best by use date as a manufacturer's suggestion. As long as it doesn't look moldy, it is still completely fine to eat. At the bottom of the ingredients list, you see it says contains wheat, milk, and soy. These are common food allergens and are legally required to be put on food packages, because if you have an allergy to any of these things, it is your right to be informed that, hey, this product contains wheat, soy, and milk. The milk in here is in the form of whey. It's important to know that this is not a dairy-free product. Here on the package, you'll notice that it actually has an address for Pepperidge Farm. It is actually a legal requirement that food companies put their contact information on the package. Usually it can be just an address. Pepperidge Farm has gone even further to have a toll-free number that you can call.
Thanks so much for calling us here at Pepperidge Farm.
Here, towards the end, we see a new statement that's going to be found on a lot of packaging. It says, contains bioengineered food ingredients. As of January of 2022, food manufacturers are legally required to state when a product contains bioengineered ingredients and what they are. It's generally going to be corn or soybean oil, but I want to make it very clear that there is no scientific debate over if bioengineered ingredients are safe to eat. In order to get genetically modified crops on the market, you have to spend often years studying the safety and efficacy of what you're producing. So this does not actually change the plant very much at all. It's usually just a couple of genes to have certain resistances to herbicides. I know the idea of changing a crop's genetics might sound scary to some people, but really over the course of thousands of years, we've been introducing desirable mutations into the food that we grow. This is just a more scientific and even targeted way to make sure that the crops have the desirable properties that we need them to have. At the end of the day, our goal is not to say, hey, this is a great product or this is a terrible product. We're not trying to shame anybody's food choices. Eat what you like. But the more you understand these terms, the more you have power to make your own food choices.